Walk inside the Great Pyramid. Look closely at the granite blocks, the massive sarcophagi, the polished surfaces, the perfectly cut stone. Now remember something shocking. Granite is one of the hardest natural stones on Earth. Even today, cutting it requires powerful machinery, diamond-tipped tools, and advanced engineering. Yet more than 4,500 years ago, the ancient Egyptians somehow quarried, transported, shaped, and polished millions of pounds of granite with astonishing precision. How? For centuries, historians believed they knew the answer. But recent studies, ancient inscriptions, and archaeological discoveries suggest the story may be far more fascinating than anyone imagined, because hidden within the evidence is a forgotten technology. Not a machine powered by electricity, not a lost futuristic device, but an ingenious system that allowed ancient craftsmen to achieve the seemingly impossible. And the clues may have been hiding in Egyptian hieroglyphs all along. Few materials were more important to ancient Egypt than granite. Most of it came from the quarries of Aswan, nearly 500 miles south of Giza. The stone was prized for its strength, durability, and beauty. Pharaohs used it for obelisks, temples, statues, burial chambers, and some of the most sacred structures in Egypt. But granite presents a serious challenge. Unlike limestone, it is extremely hard. On the Mohs hardness scale, granite is far tougher than the copper tools Egyptians supposedly used. This created a mystery. How could copper cut granite? For years, critics argued it couldn't. Some even claimed the precision of Egyptian stonework proved the existence of lost advanced technology. Others suggested unknown machines, and a few proposed even more extraordinary explanations. Yet archaeology tells a different story. Throughout Egypt, researchers have discovered unfinished statues, abandoned obelisks, and ancient quarry sites. These locations act like frozen construction zones. They preserve clues about how the work was actually done. One of the most important sites is the unfinished obelisk in Aswan. This enormous monument was never completed. A crack formed during construction, forcing workers to abandon it. Today, it remains partially attached to the bedrock, and it provides an extraordinary glimpse into ancient stone-cutting techniques. Archaeologists studying the site noticed thousands of pounding marks surrounding the obelisk. The marks weren't created by metal blades. They were created by dolerite, a hard volcanic stone. Workers used heavy dolerite hammerstones to repeatedly strike the granite, hour after hour, day after day, week after week. Slowly, the rock fractured and separated from the surrounding stone. The process was incredibly labor-intensive, but it worked. This discovery challenged many assumptions. The Egyptians weren't relying solely on copper tools. They were combining different materials for different tasks. Hard stone for rough cutting, copper tools for shaping, abrasives for finishing. It was a complete system. Then researchers discovered something even more interesting. Ancient Egyptian reliefs and inscriptions frequently emphasized craftsmen, engineers, and specialized workers. These people were highly skilled professionals. Their knowledge was passed from generation to generation. They understood stone, they understood tools, and they understood how to solve engineering problems. The deeper archaeologists investigated, the clearer the picture became. The Egyptians didn't need impossible technology. They needed expertise, and they had plenty of it. Yet one mystery remained. While pounding stones explained quarrying, it did not fully explain the precise cuts found on certain granite artifacts. Some surfaces appear remarkably smooth, some cuts seem incredibly straight, and some drill holes continue to puzzle researchers. This is where another fascinating tool enters the story, a tool that many experts believe was a true secret behind Egyptian granite work, a tool that functioned almost like a machine. Imagine standing in an Egyptian workshop 4,500 years ago. A massive block of granite sits before you. The stone is harder than steel tools available at the time. Yet somehow, craftsmen are cutting it, shaping it, polishing it, creating perfectly straight surfaces with astonishing accuracy. No electricity, no engines, no modern machinery. So what was their secret? The answer may be one of the most ingenious engineering solutions of the ancient world. Because the Egyptians may have created a machine so simple that historians overlooked its brilliance for centuries. To understand the mystery, we first need to understand granite itself. Granite is an extremely hard rock composed mainly of quartz, feldspar, and mica. Quartz is especially important. It is much harder than copper, This creates an obvious problem. A copper blade alone cannot efficiently cut granite. It would wear down far too quickly. For years, this fact puzzled researchers. Then archaeologists discovered evidence pointing toward a different method entirely. The copper tools were not doing the cutting alone. The real cutting was performed by abrasives, tiny particles of hard minerals. Ancient craftsmen likely used quartz sand as a cutting agent. This changes everything. Instead of slicing through granite like a knife, the tool acted as a carrier for the abrasive material. The sand performed the actual grinding. The copper simply held the abrasive in place. Slowly, patiently, the granite was worn away. The process was similar to modern grinding technology. Simple, but remarkably effective. Then came one of the most fascinating discoveries. Archaeologists found evidence of large copper saws. Some were several feet long. These saws were likely operated by teams of workers pulling back and forth. As sand and water were added to the cutting surface, the blade gradually ground through the stone. Not quickly, but steadily. The technique required enormous patience, yet it allowed craftsmen to create surprisingly accurate cuts. Some researchers describe these saws as ancient machines, not machines in the modern sense, but mechanical systems designed to multiply human effort. And that's where the story becomes truly fascinating. Because the Egyptians didn't rely on a single tool. They developed an entire stoneworking system. Large saws cut blocks. Tubular drills created holes. Hammerstones shaped rough surfaces. Polishing abrasives produced smooth finishes. Every tool had a purpose. Every step followed a process. Then archaeologists discovered something even more impressive. Ancient granite cores recovered from drilling operations showed spiral marks. These marks became the subject of intense debate. Some researchers argue the drilling appeared surprisingly advanced. Others believe the marks could be explained through abrasive drilling techniques. The debate continues today, but most experts agree on one thing. The Egyptians possessed a highly sophisticated understanding of stoneworking, far beyond what many people once believed. One particularly remarkable tool was a tubular drill. Imagine a hollow copper cylinder attached to a wooden shaft. Workers rotated it repeatedly while adding abrasive sand. Instead of cutting the entire surface, the drill only ground a narrow circular groove. This made the process far more efficient. As the groove deepened, a solid stone core remained in the center. Archaeologists have found several of these cores. They provide direct evidence of ancient drilling methods. The more researchers study them, the more impressive Egyptian craftsmanship becomes. Then there are the polished surfaces. Many granite artifacts display extraordinary smoothness. Statues, sarcophagi, columns, temple blocks. Achieving such finishes required countless hours of grinding and polishing. The craftsmen likely used progressively finer abrasives, each stage removing the marks left by the previous one. It was painstaking work, but the results were spectacular. Even today, many Egyptian granite objects appear remarkably refined. And perhaps that's the greatest lesson of all. The Egyptians weren't performing miracles. They weren't using mysterious lost technology. They were applying knowledge, observation, experimentation, and generations of accumulated experience. What appears impossible at first glance becomes understandable when viewed through the lens of engineering. Yet an even bigger mystery remains. How did they transport these enormous granite blocks from Aswan to sites hundreds of miles away? Some weighed more than 50 tons. Others weighed hundreds. Moving them may have been an even greater challenge than cutting them. Cutting granite was only half the challenge. The real mystery began after the stone was freed from the quarry. Imagine a granite block weighing 50 tons. Now imagine moving it nearly 500 miles across deserts, rivers, and construction sites. No trucks, no trains, no engines, no cranes. Yet somehow, the ancient Egyptians transported some of the largest stone blocks ever moved in the ancient world. How? The answer reveals one of the greatest logistical achievements in human history. Deep in southern Egypt lay the granite quarries of Aswan. Here, workers extracted the red granite used for temples, obelisks, pyramids, and royal monuments. The stone was valuable, strong, beautiful, and incredibly difficult to move. Once a block was cut free from the bedrock, a new challenge emerged: transportation. The Egyptians needed a way to move enormous weights over vast distances, and remarkably, they found one: the Nile River. For ancient Egypt, the Nile was more than a source of water. It was the kingdom's highway, a natural transportation system stretching across the entire country. The Egyptians quickly learned that moving heavy cargo by water was far easier than moving it across land. This discovery transformed construction. Large granite blocks could be loaded onto specially designed barges and floated north toward major building sites. Ancient reliefs show massive boats carrying enormous cargoes. Some scenes depict colossal statues being transported along the Nile. Others show teams coordinating complex river operations. These images reveal a civilization that understood large-scale logistics. And they reveal something else. Nothing happened by accident. Every shipment required planning. Every journey required coordination. Every stone had to arrive at precisely the right location. Then archaeologists discovered evidence supporting these ancient images. At several sites, researchers uncovered remains of canals, harbors, and docking facilities connected to major construction projects. The Egyptians weren't simply using the Nile. They were modifying it, engineering waterways that brought materials closer to their destinations. One of the most important discoveries came from the ancient harbor at Wadi al-Jaf. There, archaeologists uncovered papyrus record belonging to a supervisor named Mir. His diary described teams transporting limestone for the Great Pyramid. The documents revealed a highly organized transportation network operating during the reign of Khufu. If limestone could be transported this way, granite almost certainly followed similar routes. The implications were enormous. The pyramids weren't isolated construction sites. They were connected to a vast supply system spanning hundreds of miles. Yet river transport solved only part of the problem. Eventually, the stones had to leave the boats. Then what? This is where one of Egypt's most ingenious techniques appears. Archaeologists have found evidence that workers used massive wooden sledges. The stone block would be placed on the sledge. Teams of laborers then pulled it across prepared surfaces. At first glance, this seems impossible. The weight was enormous. But ancient artwork reveals a crucial detail. Workers poured water onto the sand in front of the sledges. For centuries, historians wondered why. Then modern experiments provided the answer. Wet sand dramatically reduces friction. Instead of piling up in front of the sledge, the sand becomes firmer and easier to traverse. The difference is remarkable. With the correct amount of moisture, workers could move heavy loads far more efficiently. An ancient image had preserved a sophisticated engineering solution for thousands of years. Then came the obelisks. Some weighed hundreds of tons. The largest unfinished obelisk at Aswan would have weighed more than 1,000 tons if completed. Moving such a monument pushed Egyptian engineering to its limits. The fact that they even attempted such projects demonstrates extraordinary confidence in their methods. Every stage required precision. Quarrying, loading, river transport, unloading, hauling, positioning. One mistake could destroy months or years of work. Yet countless monuments reached their destination successfully. The system worked. And that may be the most astonishing fact of all. The Egyptians weren't relying on luck. They were relying on knowledge. Knowledge refined over centuries. Knowledge passed from master craftsmen to apprentices. Knowledge powerful enough to move mountains of stone. But transporting granite was still not the final challenge. Once the blocks arrived at temples and pyramids, they had to be lifted into place. Sometimes dozens of feet above the ground. Sometimes even higher. And that brings us to the greatest engineering puzzle of all. How did the Egyptians raise these enormous granite blocks into position with such incredible accuracy? Moving a 50-ton granite block across Egypt was extraordinary. But transporting it was only half the battle. The real challenge came next. How do you lift a stone weighing more than a modern tank? How do you place it dozens of feet above the ground? How do you position it with such precision that thousands of years later the joints still fit almost perfectly? No cranes, no hydraulics, no steel, no engines. Yet somehow the ancient Egyptians achieved exactly that. And the secret may lie in a surprisingly simple machine. Once granite blocks arrived at construction sites, workers faced the most difficult stage of the entire process: lifting. Unlike limestone blocks used in many pyramid structures, granite was far heavier. A single mistake could crack the stone, damage the monument, or injure dozens of workers. Everything had to be carefully planned. For centuries, historians believed ramps were the primary solution, and evidence strongly supports this idea. Ancient builders constructed large earthen ramps leading toward construction areas. These ramps allowed sledges carrying granite blocks to be dragged upward gradually. The principle was simple. Instead of lifting a stone vertically, workers spread the effort over a longer distance. A steep lift became a manageable incline. Modern engineers still use the same principle today. The ramp was one of humanity's earliest and most effective machines. But ramps alone do not explain everything, especially when it came to placing granite blocks with precision. This is where another fascinating tool appears. The lever, one of the simplest machines ever invented, and one of the most powerful. Archaeologists believe Egyptian workers used large wooden beams as levers. By placing one end beneath a stone and applying force to the other, workers could lift massive weights a small distance. Wooden supports would then be inserted beneath the block. The process would repeat again and again. Slowly, the stone rose higher. Each lift might be only a few inches, but hundreds of small lifts could raise a block several feet. The technique required patience, yet it provided remarkable control. And unlike giant cranes, it could be built using materials readily available in ancient Egypt. Then came a discovery that excited researchers around the world. At the ancient quarry of Hatnub, archaeologists uncovered evidence of an advanced ramp system. The site contained a steep central ramp flanked by staircases. Along the staircases were rows of holes where wooden posts had once stood. Researchers believe ropes were wrapped around these posts. As workers pulled, the posts created a mechanical advantage, making it easier to move heavy stones uphill. In effect, the system functioned like an ancient lifting machine, not powered by engines, powered by physics. The discovery demonstrated that Egyptian engineers understood how to multiply force using simple tools, and that understanding may have played a crucial role in pyramid construction. Then there are the granite beams inside the Great Pyramid itself. Some weigh more than 50 tons. These enormous blocks were placed high above the king's chamber. Their purpose was structural. They helped redirect pressure away from the chamber below, but placing them required extraordinary precision. Even today, engineers admire the achievement, because moving such weights into position without modern equipment is an enormous challenge. The deeper researchers study these structures, the clearer the picture becomes. The Egyptians did not rely on a single miraculous machine. They relied on systems, ramps, levers, ropes, sledges, counterweights, and highly organized teams of workers. Each component played a role. Together, they formed one of the most effective construction methods in the ancient world. Then there's the human factor. Thousands of skilled laborers coordinated their efforts with remarkable discipline. Supervisors managed logistics. Engineers planned construction stages. Craftsmen ensured accuracy. The true machine was not just wood and rope. It was an entire workforce operating with precision. That may be the greatest lesson of all. The pyramids and temples were not built by impossible technology. They were built by human ingenuity, a civilization that understood engineering, organization, and persistence at an extraordinary level. Yet one final mystery remains. Some granite artifacts display cuts, drill marks, and polished surfaces so impressive that debates continue to this day. Were the known tools truly capable of producing such precision? Or is there still something we have yet to understand? For more than a century, one question has divided historians, engineers, and researchers. Did the ancient Egyptians possess a lost machine capable of cutting granite with incredible precision? Or were their achievements simply the result of patience, skill, and engineering genius? The answer lies hidden within unfinished monuments, abandoned quarries, experimental archaeology, and the marks left behind by craftsmen thousands of years ago. And what modern researchers have discovered is astonishing. Throughout Egypt, evidence of ancient stoneworking survives everywhere. Quarries, temples, statues, sarcophagi, obelisks. Each one preserves clues about how the work was done. The deeper archaeologists investigate, the more they realize that the Egyptians left behind a complete engineering record, not in a single inscription, not in one hidden chamber, but scattered across the landscape itself. The stones tell the story. One of the biggest breakthroughs came when researchers attempted to recreate Egyptian techniques, using copper tools, quartz sand, stone hammers, and replica drills. The results surprised many people. The methods actually worked. Not quickly, not easily, but they worked. Copper saws combined with abrasive sand could cut granite. Tubular drills could create deep holes. Polishing stones could produce smooth finishes. What seemed impossible at first gradually became understandable. The secret was never the copper itself. The secret was the abrasive material. Quartz sand performed the cutting. The tool merely guided it. In many ways, the process resembles modern industrial grinding systems. Simple physics, extraordinary results. Then came another important realization. Modern people often underestimate ancient labor. We think in terms of machines, efficiency, speed. The Egyptians thought differently. They possessed enormous workforces, generations of skilled craftsmen, and decades to complete major projects. A task that seems impossible for a small team becomes achievable when thousands of trained workers cooperate. The pyramids themselves prove this principle. So do the temples. So do the colossal statues. Again and again, Egyptian monuments demonstrate what organized labor can accomplish. Yet some mysteries remain. Certain drill marks, certain polished surfaces, certain granite artifacts continue to inspire debate among researchers, not because they are impossible, but because they demonstrate an extremely high level of craftsmanship. The Egyptians were masters of their trade, and mastery often appears mysterious to those who no longer possess the same skills. Imagine showing a modern smartphone to someone from the Middle Ages. It would appear magical, yet it is the product of knowledge. The same may be true of Egyptian granite work. Their methods seem extraordinary because the expertise behind them has been lost. But expertise is not magic. It is knowledge refined over generations, and perhaps that is the real machine behind Egypt's greatest achievements. Knowledge itself, the ability to observe, experiment, improve, and pass information from one generation to the next. That invisible machine built the pyramids. It raised obelisks. It shaped granite. And it created monuments that still stand thousands of years later. The hieroglyphs, reliefs, quarry marks, and archaeological evidence all point toward the same conclusion. The Egyptians were not relying on impossible technology. They were relying on engineering. They understood materials. They understood force. They understood friction. They understood leverage. And most importantly, they understood persistence. Because granite does not surrender easily. It demands patience, skill, and determination. The ancient craftsmen possessed all three, and that is why their work continues to amaze the world today. Ironically, the more we learn about ancient Egypt, the less mysterious their achievements become. Yet somehow, they become even more impressive. Because the true wonder isn't a lost machine. It isn't a forgotten technology. It isn't an impossible secret. The true wonder is that human beings, armed with simple tools and extraordinary knowledge, created some of the greatest monuments in history. And after more than 4,500 years, their stone still speaks. If you enjoyed uncovering the secrets behind ancient Egypt's granite cutting technology, be sure to subscribe to Mystery of the Ancients and turn on notifications for more stories about lost engineering, hidden hieroglyphs, forgotten technologies, ancient discoveries, and the greatest mysteries ever carved into stone. The deeper we dig into the ancient world, the more incredible it becomes.